I'm here with Khalil Hudson, David Nordstrom, and Alex Jablonski, the directors of Navajo Police Class 57. What got you started on putting this docu-series together?
Well, it started off with a discussion we were having around tribal sovereignty. I think, I was really interested in finding a topic that kind of could kind of indirectly talk about tribal sovereignty. This idea that Native tribes have an inherent authority to govern themselves, and the Navajo Police is the only tribal police department that trains their own officers, and in an act of tribal sovereignty, right? And so that's kind of where it started.
I've seen the first episode and half the second episode. I've got the screeners late, but I'll watch the rest of the second one and the third one. So I'm kind of curious to see where this goes, but thus far, this seems like police force that I'm kind of already familiar with. I don't know if I was expecting like a different approach to law enforcement. Is there anything to come that comes of that? Or is just kind of, this is what humans are capable of when it comes to law enforcement?
When you said you were expecting something different, what do you mean?
Also, based on the limited history I know of Navajo and all sorts of native tribes, a lot of law enforcement was instrumental in constantly holding them down. So I figure, hey, we're gonna come up with our own law enforcement. We're gonna rise above that, try something different. And so far in the first episode, a lot of what I've seen was a bunch of similar behavior, military kind of like training that you would see in any other police force. And there's not much in the way of like psychological training, such as like de-escalating situations, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you see that later. I also think that what we get into is, and what makes it so unique is that because it is Navajos policing Navajos and they are within living within the community that they police, their relationship to the community is entirely different. They're beginning at a time where they at times are even arresting or responding to calls with their relatives. And so you have a kind of different approach to begin with from the moment that you step out of the police unit. So while it might look the same in terms of you got a badge, you've got a gun, I think that at its core, the way that you relate to the people you're policing is very different.
What are some of the differences that you've seen that may either show up later on in an episode or maybe that didn't quite make the cut that you've seen that as far as like training and just policing in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like how you respond to a call. Like if you hop out of the car and your idea is that the way you respond to a call is with an arrest, then that is, a kind of Western idea of policing. I think that if you hop out of the unit and your thinking is, I'm here to bring balance to the situation, I'm here to bring, to restore harmony, for lack of a better term, then I think that's a much more indigenous Navajo way of policing. And I think that you do see that. You see a desire to kind of, okay, what does it take to restore balance to this situation as opposed to who can I throw in the back of the unit?
I would just add that a huge part of the series is exploring the tension between what you've identified and what Alex is talking about. It's a tension between a sort of westernized approach to policing and what the original sort of Navajo vision for what a peacemaker or a warrior guardian looks like.
And also, having not finished the series yet, it does feel like feels like it could be expanded upon, because as with any sort of government agency or anything like this, there's a lot of little ins and outs that you can always explore. Is there any plans on kind of expanding this further?
That is not up to us.
If it were up to you, no, just
yeah. I mean, I think that there's a million interesting stories to be told out there using policing as the keyhole to get to these other issues. Absolutely.
I also noticed, like looking at your IMDb credits, all three of you are all over the place as far as the writer, director, editor, producer, and the fact that the three of you are directing this simultaneously. First of all, how does that workflow work? And also, how do you bring in the other filmmaking aspects that you're familiar with into directing and working together?
Yeah.
Well, all three of us worked on our Alex and I directed a film called Wildland about wildland firefighters that Dave worked on as well. So, our last project we worked together we kind of broke up the duties. We shot for 123 days. When you're out there that long, it's really difficult, especially when you're working 16-hour hour days. You're in the cruiser, in and out of the cruiser, in and out of people's homes. And so Alex and I often sometimes we were out there together, sometimes we'd tag team. Dave was out there for the first couple months as well, and then Dave headed back and kind of led the post team. He and Ariel Kilker were the lead editors as well, and as producers and EPs. That's kind of how we split it up. I mean, Dave would kind of be looking at the footage that we were getting, and we were kind of communicating back and forth. He was kind of helping shape the story from The Office. And we would go out and kind of follow some of his leads, and that's kind of how we broke it up. And we should say that Alex and I, for quite a few days, especially when we were out in the ride-alongs in the units with the officers, a lot of times it was just one of us out there with a camera and with an audio kit. So we also had two other directors of photography who helped us certainly helped us on bigger days. Roy Graff and Shandine Tome, who's Navajo. We were kind of wearing a lot of hats. All of us were wearing a lot of hats, like we've done in the past.
I was going to say, I think you can make the argument that the auteur theory of filmmaking doesn't really even hold water in the scripted world. There's just way too many collaborative voices. I think that model breaks down even more when you get into documentary. And all the projects I've worked on, frequently you're dealing with someone who's only credited as a camera op, who is in effect directing and guiding a scene, acting as an interviewer, choosing what we're focusing on, taking over all the sort of traditional activities that we define as a director. So I think it lends itself to a more sort of permeable hierarchy.
To your question about like, how does the past work inform the current work, or the different roles inform those? I came up as an editor. On this, I was shooting a ton. And if you have spent a lot of time editing verite footage and banging your head against the wall because you can't find a proper cutaway, then when you're out in the field, like, oh, I better get a shot of their shoes. I better get a shot of the unit here. You're really conscious of how am I going to get the material so that the editor can stitch together an actual, a verite scene that feels really cohesive.
I was just going to bring that up because I've had a little bit of experience with that, and I think the idea of like marrying cinematography, if you have a background in that and editing, just like you say, but also do you have any things where like you might turn the camera off a bit early because it's like I don't want to go through that footage, like there's nothing happening. I'm not going to scroll through 2 hours of nothing.
Yeah, I mean there are definitely times. I mean, you're balancing all this stuff, but yeah, at times you're just like, oh my God, this is going nowhere, and turn it off.
And so there's been in the episodes, there's been some pretty harrowing things happen. Do some of your does your filmmaking brain turn off and turn into panic at some point where it's like, oh, I should have got that shot, but I was just, who knew what was going to happen at that point, and your safety's first. And so maybe you didn't get a shot that you probably should have, worrying about your own safety.
It's the opposite for me. The filmmaking brain takes over and the safety brain turns off.
Oh, that's not good.
So you have to kind of remind yourself, because when you're in these situations and you're looking at your screen, you're just so blind to everything that's happening around you that your situational awareness can really diminish quite quickly. I found myself, and also the distance that shooting something creates when you're looking through the camera, it almost makes you feel safe in a way that you're not. And so I found myself having to constantly remind myself, like, no, look up, look around, like this is a really dynamic situation. But no, I was always focused on getting the shot, oftentimes to the detriment of the situation I was in.
That's so true. I mean, you're looking at the monitor and you're just like, oh, there's a guy who's on PCP who's like raging and like, I need to get as close as I can to this, and it's like, I need a tight shot. Right. So yeah, your self-preservation instinct is dulled, when you're looking at a monitor.
Kind of like, wow, this movie's really good. Oh wait, that's that. Oh shit.
Absolutely.
So what, also, I guess kind of speaking to that, do you have, because I asked someone else who does documentaries, kind of a similar thing about mental health, because what you guys, the stuff with the training, that's pretty cut and dried. But then when you go out on the field, I mean, you guys are seeing some shit, and that's got to mess with your kind of mental wellness. Do you take any precautions of that, maybe to minimize any PTSD you may see, like when something crazy happens or anything like that?
Well, we did talk. Well, yeah, we talked with the therapist. Alex and I both had talked with the therapist, and it was something that we asked for and then kind of pursued. I hadn't watched this series in a couple of months, and the three of us watched the series with the Navajo PD a couple of days ago out in Window Rock, and I have to say, I felt like when the series ended, I felt like I had been punched in the face, and part of it is just kind of like how just emotionally strong the narrative is. I mean, it's you're in for a ride, but a big piece of it also for me was just kind of bringing up the memories of some of these situations which were really heavy. When the screening ended, I was like, this really affected me and it's affecting me today.
Sorry, my brain left me. But the first two episodes are premiering on October 7th, and the final episode
October 17th.
Hey guys, I just woke up. Like a couple hours ago. First two episodes premiering on HBO on October 17th, and the final episode on October 18th. What was the decision splitting it up, just the one episode the extra day instead of just
they all drop at the same time on Max. So
okay.
on the platform, I think it was more just to kind of showcase the series and put it in prime time for 2 nights in a row.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I guess we'll just end on this. We have a What's in the Box segment, and looking at your IMDb's and all the filmmaking stuff you guys do, I'm guessing all three of you are film nerds.
Deeply.
Otherwise, why are we doing this? But we have a What's in the Box segment, and in the box we have people put in movies that are either personal to you or something you think is vastly underseen. Like, this is a really good one and no one talks about it. So what's a movie each of you would want to put in the box?
Oh, there's so many. I mean, off the top of my head, the movie I show most people that they haven't seen is Elaine May's The Heartbreak Kid, the original 70s The Heartbreak Kid, not the Farrelly Brothers remake. That's all right. It's always been a fun one to show new film friends or family members or partners. It's always fun to watch people watch that movie because it's exquisitely uncomfortable, very, very funny, very, very moving. So I recommend The Heartbreak Kid by Elaine May.
I'm going to put 2 movies in the box because they're the sequel, which is The Souvenir and The Souvenir Part 2, Joanna Hogg's most recent films. And that's because these are films about filmmaking. And if we're talking about filmmaking, about processing your life through making films, they have a kind of almost verite feel to them at times, and just a real authenticity of emotion. And I just absolutely adore both those movies. And not a lot of people have seen them.
And you?
Well, can I do 2 films then?
Yeah, wait, we can circle back to Dave and you can throw it in.
Yeah, hold on. I gotta find a second one.
All right. Well, I want to plug a film that I loved when I first saw it, and I watch it every year with my documentary class. It's a film by one of our friends, Jason Tippett, co-directed by Elizabeth Mims. It's called Only the Young. It's a documentary. It came out about 10 years ago, and it follows a group of teenagers just kind of as they live their lives and go in and out of certain periods in their, this period in their life where they're kind of finding themselves skateboarding out in the suburbs, the far edges of Los Angeles. And then my other documentary that I really like, I kind of consider it one of perfect documentary in a lot of ways. It's called The Island of Hungry Ghosts. And it is it's about the crab migration on Christmas Island, but that's kind of intercut with 2 other stories, which is the now it's been closed, but this internment camp for undocumented immigrants on Christmas Island. And it kind of tells their story through their therapist. And then the third story that is kind of intercut there is a story about these Chinese immigrants as they feed their dead and hungry relatives. Anyways, it's just a beautiful film, and it just synthesizes in a way that I just love. And it's the kind of film that kind of slowly seeps into your mind and then just synthesizes. Those are my two.
And Dave, did he find a second one yet?
Oh, another one I guess I would tell people to watch a lot if they haven't seen it, and this kind of fits into quasi-documentary, at least in terms of the feel of it aesthetically, is Michael Ritchie's film Smile from 1975. Not the, there's a horror film that came out last year called Smile. This is the 70s Smile by Michael Ritchie. It's the film he made before The Bad News Bears. That's just a great sort of funny but searing satire about the beauty pageant kind of culture in America.
Those are all great picks because I've heard The Heartbreak Kid and Only the Young, and that's pretty much it. So those are great picks.
Check them out.
Yeah, and so Navajo Police Class 57 comes out October 17th and October 18th. Look forward to watching the rest of it. It's pretty riveting so far. So congratulations to all of you, and I hope you take care mentally and physically in other documentary endeavors.
Thanks very much, Eric.